Welcome to Flourishing Unfiltered, the podcast for high achievers who seek a professional life that feels as good as it looks.
We talk about the unseen journey of struggles on the path to success that people rarely talk about.
I'm Kieran Smith, positive psychology and leadership coach and consultant.
And I'm Dr. Michael Neuhaus, positive psychology and self-leadership speaker and consultant.
Before we begin today, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we're recording. We pay our deepest respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
As we share our stories today, we honour the rich tradition of storytelling that has been passed down through generations.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Future of Flourishing, a futures thinking media, training and venture lab dedicated to bridging the gap between scientific knowledge and practical application in the field of human flourishing.
The Future of Flourishing is committed to creating a comprehensive ecosystem of communication and innovation platforms. Find out more about the Future of Flourishing at futureofflourishing.com.
If you enjoy our podcast, please leave us a review. It would mean the world to us.
Now, today's guest is the incredible Clare Sarah Goodridge. Clare is a lifelong learner, passionate about helping individuals unlock their peak potential to contribute to a flourishing society and planet. She's dedicated to equalizing and scaling human flourishing globally and does so particularly effectively through the two global organizations she's founded, Flourish Faster and the Future of Flourishing, which is also the sponsor of this show. But Clare's achievements don't stop there. Clare is doing a doctorate in business leadership focused on how to lead in times of uncertainty for thriving humans and thriving organizations. She's a faculty member at the Center for Human Potential, coach for the Transcend Course with Dr. Barry Kaufman, and partner at the Flourish Cafes, a collaboration supported by Bath Uni and the Harvard Flourishing Program. To top it all off, Clare previously served as head performance coach and head of experience at the Flow Research Collective with Steven Kotler, mentoring over 200 peak performance coaches. Clare, you are absolutely incredible. Your achievements are nothing short of astonishing, and yet what really stands out to me is that when I met you last year, it became evident very quickly that you practice what you preach. Your main focus seems to be on how you can support others and lift them up and support them to flourish, all the while you're incredibly humble yourself. Who even are you? But that was not my first official question. What I'd love to know is, where does this all come from? What inspired you to start on this trajectory and ultimately create the Future of Flourishing?
Well, thank you for that lovely intro, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think the thing that began this particular part of this journey, this has been a windy career for me since my early 20s, but really what I've always been fascinated by and believed in is the potential of human potential. I have a futurist inside me who looks to the future and is excited by the future and really, I guess, can see what humans could be if we really stepped into our full humanness. And at the same time, I'm quite a realist in the sense that today, here and now, there's a bit of work that we need to do to heal some past traumas and transform our human wellness in 2024 so that we can actually truly reach that potential. So I came across that deep feeling maybe about 5 or 6 years ago when I was working inside the disability sector in Australia, who was going through a lot of changes with the introduction to the NDIS. So I was working as back then, a brand consultant, brand storytelling consultant, that was looking at how to really humanize brands so that they could connect with humans. I used to have this tagline of, we create brands people fall in love with, and so therefore I was getting a lot of insight into leadership and into boards and how they were operating within specifically the disability sector and how they were dealing with change. And even though there was some brilliant leadership and a lot of experience in the room, I saw that humans aren't always the best at leading through change. And I saw a lot of unrest within the organisations with the employees that would either present as anxiety or depression, or maybe just general disillusionment with the way of the world and the way the sector was operating, or stress or burnout and all these things. And I just thought, how can we lead better through change, in that, just within that context? So that took me down a massive rabbit hole. You know that I love my rabbit holes. And I I was really just looking at, what kind of conditions do we need to create within organisations for humans, for employees to flourish, and what does that look and feel like? And it began with this concept of just really creating cultures of deep connection. How do we do that? Trust, psychological safety, and deep connection was sort of where I began. And I really looked into the science of that, so the neuroscience of connection, the neuroscience of trust, and did a lot of work around the country, around Australia, doing some experiments around, how do we really truly create those cultures of deep connection, and had some success in that area. And then I kind of thought, what can we do with that deep connection, that culture of deep connection? What's the true potential of that kind of environment for humans? And I was pondering that for some time, and that's when someone handed me Steven Kotler's book, Rise of Superman, and I was sort of reintroduced to this concept of flow state. I'd read Me High Chicks at Me Highest Flow when I was in my mid-20s, I think, and always been someone that really, resonated deeply with the concept of flow and with ideas around synchronicity and serendipity and that kind of openness to experience of life that can bring in beautiful experiences of flow. But the neuroscience of flow was something I wasn't familiar with, and obviously that's the work that Steven Kotler was doing and is still doing. So I just was fascinated by that, went down that particular rabbit hole, haven't come out, and did a lot of training in that area in the States, and then was lucky enough to be in the position to be hired within his startup back in 2019. Did a lot of work with him to both build the company with his partner Ian Doris, but then also create a lot of the initial programs with Steven, and then deliver them. So deliver them initially to both consumers, individuals, mostly leaders in the United States who were looking at up-leveling their performance, and then with businesses, organisations within the States, and then eventually coaching coaches. So I just found myself immersed in that world in the pandemic as well. So I was meant to be doing that from the States, but I was stuck in Perth in my little apartment in North Fremantle with my pug at the time, which was challenging, and did the work. It was life-changing for me and career-changing in ways, and then sort of that was my trajectory, and over time I decided to create my own startup that had a slightly different emphasis, less on peak performance and more on optimal well-being, because really I don't think you can have that peak performance without the foundations of the optimal well-being, and building that out in different formats over the last 3 years now, actually. So it's had the future of flourishing has had a few different a few different focuses over that time, and I can go into that a little later, but it's been evolving. It's an evolving concept. It's a community of people as well. It's a question, what is the future of flourishing? It's an exploration with the people that I'm working with, and it's taken me around the world, and right now it's sort of landed me back in my hometown in Perth to do a bit of work here in Australia with these kind of questions and curiosities as well.
That is so incredible and fascinating. I don't know if you want to jump in, Karen, but one thing I would love to hear a little bit more about is the different iterations of the future of flourishing and the different foci that you just mentioned before. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I sort of really began at creating programs. So I've been doing a doctorate of business leadership during this experience as well over the last 5 years. And that doctorate is focused on creating, I guess, a leadership paradigm that speaks into this stuff. So how do we lead through change? How do we create cultures of deep connection? And how do we unlock human potential anchored to organisational potential? And through that, I saw an opportunity to layer together or integrate a lot of the cognitive sciences that were operating and being trained in silos and bring them together to kind of form this blueprint for unlocking human potential. So not an easy thing to do, but that's been my project for some time, because I saw through working for different entities and within different spaces, whether that be the neuroscience of flow or the humanistic psychology work with Dr. Barry Kaufman, or then working more on the neurobiology of peak performance, and looking at nervous systems and how to regulate them. All of that together is wonderful. All of that in isolation is wonderful, but layered together is a far more holistic approach to human wellness and human flourishing. So I created a program. I see it as this work, as you know, is not linear in nature. It's cyclical. There's a virtuous cycle. It's a forever game. But these programs notoriously get taught in a linear fashion, which makes sense to a degree. So it was a 12-week program that I piloted twice with CEOs, leaders, coaches from around the world. And then I took that to a creative development team, because the other thing I'm quite passionate about is this interdisciplinary approach to creating programs. So not just integrating ideas, sciences, philosophies, art into how we unlock human potential, but also bringing lots of different people together to train and coach that, and language it, to interpret it, to translate the science. So I had a wonderful team of about 12 experts from different fields, pull that program apart, put it back together, and we piloted it again. And that's what I launched the Future of Flourishing with in about, I think, 2021. We were in LA. We had a lovely, amazing, fun launch. And it was a program then, for some time we were selling programs. And then, as I sat with that, there's a flooded market out there. It's confusing for people sometimes going on this journey. Which program to do, what to invest in. There's so much out there, and it can be in itself a bit of a lonely journey. And I felt that what was needed most, and this is again probably about a year into the work, was more of a community around this, a community of people committed to up-leveling their potential, to growing themselves, to building foundations for growth. And so I started to sort of morph into creating a trusted community of initially coaches, entrepreneurs and leaders, but I think this is a community for also, in the future, creatives, scientists, artists, young people, old people, like older, it's sort of just, you've got to sort of start somewhere, but that's the kind of people that are there at the moment. And the idea with that is both, to continue the continuous learning and really do that in an interesting, emergent way, but also create a safe space for those people to come together and share stories, connect with their peers, not be afraid to tell the harder side of the story or the challenges, and just kind of really be there for each other during what has become a fairly isolated experience. Working as a coach or a leader or an entrepreneur, both because of post-COVID conditions where a lot of this work is now remote, which is fantastic on one hand, but has its challenges on another, especially as time goes on. And also just being sort of in that place where you're the one serving, you're the one helping others flourish, and sometimes your own flourishing therefore gets a back seat. And I've certainly experienced that myself, and I'm working on that for myself, but at the same time I'm really wanting to help others that I respect and love and really want their potential to be unlocked. I'm trying to help create those conditions for them as well. So that's where we've sort of landed. But for the future, I've got ideas around having a digital radio station, around creating a non-profit to this, around getting inside schools and education systems. Future of flourishing kindergartens are my dream. So really, it could go anywhere. But at the moment, it's around really creating community in this space globally and locally. So really looking at opening up opportunities for people to come together in real life, through the Future Flourishing experience, but then create their own sort of context and scenarios anchored to that in their own way.
Claire, you've absolutely had an incredible journey, as Marcus just mentioned there, and it is just so fascinating to sort of hear where things have started off and as to where they're headed as well. It's really exciting to sort of be connected with you, and I think a lot of what you're speaking about is going to resonate deeply with a lot of the people that are tuning in and listening to this podcast. One of the things that I want to sort of just go back to, and you've touched on it, is this maybe loneliness that we might experience as we begin a business venture. Where we're starting out fresh. It can be one of those things, and you did mention loneliness, so I want to tap into that one there. Can you just unpack, maybe unpack for us, a time when you felt lonely, in that startup process as you were trying to develop and work out where the future of flourishing was heading, and sort of what impact that experience had on you?
I think that it's such an interesting concept, loneliness. And it's one that I think, just want to say up front, is sort of, it's such a personal experience. So no one person's experience of loneliness is the same. And it's quite contextually agnostic. So you can feel lonely because you are literally alone, like there's no other humans around you, which was my experience through the pandemic. You can feel lonely inside relationships or inside organizations. It's a very unique experience for individuals, and you might experience loneliness in different ways in your life, in wildly different ways. So it first dawned upon me, this feeling of loneliness during the pandemic. So I was, Perth wasn't as terrible as the eastern states. I guess we didn't have the kind of lockdowns that Melbourne had, for example, but at the same time, Australia was pretty strict with how we operated, and I found myself at the time about, I guess, 3 or 4 months out of separating from a long-term relationship, and so it was me and my dog, and working through the night for doing a lot of things at 3 a.m. and amazing work. I'd never change it, but it did mean that it was more difficult to uphold a normal lifestyle in Perth at the time, because I was having to sleep during the day, and I guess a lot of shift workers experienced that. And it just over time became, it became evident to me that I was really lacking in real life contact. And I was so lucky at the time to have a dog, the love of my life, Scarlett, my pug. To have her through that time was just invaluable, and I then had a lot of empathy for people who didn't have a dog, or maybe had been living in that kind of way for many, many years. This was just a short-term experience for me. So that opened my eyes to it. But then over time, I think what it feels like now is twofold. One is this virtual nature of our existence. So whilst I'm so grateful to be able to do this with you two and in different parts of the world, and my work wouldn't have happened if we couldn't Zoom and do all the things. And at first, I didn't notice any difference between Zoom and real life and all the things. It just didn't dawn on me that anything was changing. But 5 years into this sort of virtual way of working, it's starting to compound, and I'm really noticing that I feel different when I'm in real life. I get more nervous. I don't feel as in real life experiences are far more uncomfortable for me than the virtual space, and that's a bit strange. So I just was becoming sort of noticing that, and noticing that impact on my psyche, and noticing that I really think I need to get out and about more in real life, because it wasn't having the most positive impact on me. I still live, as a single person, and because a lot of my work is online, I don't get to, go and do things in real life because I have to be here. So that was one interesting experience, and again, I think that's an experience writ large for a lot of people. And the other one is leading a company, a startup. It is scary. You have to do 1,000 different things. You're seemingly meant to be good at those things. And to say that you're lonely, unfortunately, still has this massive stigma attached to it. It's not something people want to hear necessarily. If they do hear it, they worry about you. They don't want to worry about you. They want to think you're killing it, doing amazing. And so it gets internalized unless you're brave enough to start talking about it. And I decided, I think it was sort of late last year when we relaunched the community side of the Future Flourishing, to start talking about it. In fact, we opened and launched with 2 really interesting subjects, really. The subject of forgiveness, and that being at the bedrock of human flourishing. And then we had a beautiful speaker at the end who really spoke into this concept of loneliness, because, as you guys would know, because of the work that you're doing together, it's systemic. It's infiltrating globally. It's no small thing, and it's a thing we can actually share. This idea of sharing our loneliness is actually quite healing and the way through. the way through to connection again. So yeah, I really wanted to be brave enough, and I'm still not. I want to be braver. And part of doing this podcast is I want to be talking more and more, but I still worry about, is it the right thing to be talking about these things? Should I be having more of a facade? And I mean, I fundamentally believe, no, I shouldn't have a facade. And yes, it is the right thing to be talking about. But yeah, opening up spaces for people I just am in awe of, including the two of you, where we can actually as peers come together and say, yeah, it can be really hard. Doesn't mean we're failing, doesn't mean we won't find a way through, or we're going to be lonely forever, or that we're even lonely, but we have experiences of loneliness, and they're tough on humans because we're social creatures. So yeah, it's been an interesting experience, and one that I'm quite humbled to have experienced as someone who has lots of friends, a beautiful family, lots of deep connection around the world. I'm not lacking in connection, but my experience on a day-to-day life can at times be fairly alone or lonely. So yeah, that's my experience at the moment.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Claire. I really appreciate that. And I think I'm probably not just speaking for myself when I say it really resonates with me. I can so relate to that. I think, if you work as a solopreneur, as an entrepreneur, as a coach, as a whatever, it's exactly that. I think we all have at times experiences of loneliness. Doesn't necessarily mean we are lonely, but I also agree with you that there is a lot of stigma to it. It has this really negative connotation of something that should just be, or is just, a normal human experience, especially, for this professional group. And I guess that's exactly why we're here, to normalize those chats around that, and I think opening up to, or talking to peers around that, should at least be easier than maybe talking to other people around that who are maybe embedded, who are employed, embedded in an organization, in a team, who just go out and physically see people and hang out with people for the better part of the day. Because I agree, it's a very different experience. And I also think it's interesting that you mentioned that after a number of years, it really started to accumulate for you, and you started to notice the cumulative effects of it. I think that's a very interesting point. And by the way, I remember from your launch party, the talk, was it by Dr. Monica, what's her surname again?
Zhang, J-A-I-N-G.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember her talk. It was fabulous. So I appreciate all that. I'm curious to know how you currently, being aware of all of this and the risks, if, to put it that way, the risks of feeling lonely at times and having these challenges of constantly being on, having to do everything yourself because you're working in your own business. What helps you to navigate and cope with those challenges?
I think it's twofold. I think what I did quite naturally, and on retrospect, it makes sense because I think this can help in all ways of life at times, is I kind of, the thing that I was desiring or needing, I started to give a lot more of. So I was desiring a safe space to connect with my peers, and the more I started talking about that to a trusted circle of people, the more I heard that they needed that too. So it's really interesting. So then it became this reciprocal experience. And I think reciprocity is such an important thing in this world right now, to help humans come together again, to help humans love each other. So the giving led to the receiving, and that really, really, really helped. At the same time, it's just been that sort of radical discipline also of self-care, and that can be really difficult when you're working around the clock, when you are doing 1,000 things as you do as an entrepreneur or solopreneur, especially doing other things at the same time, studying and that kind of thing, and had to be really, really vigilant with just the basics. And sometimes I'm very good at that, and sometimes I am not, and then have to get back on the wagon again, so to speak. So for me it's things like obviously sleep, and just the little moments of joy, little slices of joy that I can give to myself. So just finding that deep connection with self again and really loving that, really making those moments special. So I have these little rituals throughout the week. Ice baths for me are really good. Ice baths and sauna, that's just a little sanctuary. Not everyone's into that, but I know it does something to me. It makes me so happy. I have these little moments of connection with myself on a Saturday morning. It's an ice bath sauna, and then I come home and there's this fantastic radio station here called RTR FM. It's the local radio station, and I think it's one of the best radio stations on this planet. But they do Saturday morning jazz, so I do that. I make pancakes, which is a experience that connects me with my family when we were kids. And I have coffee and pancakes and jazz, and so it's important to cherish and create those moments of connection to self as well, because there's not always people around, and also sometimes you need, even me being, I at times quite introverted in nature, I need to fill up my cup, so I don't always need to be around people. So it's a tricky thing when you're feeling a little isolated or lonely as an introvert, doing a lot of this work on Zoom, talking, needing that space alone, but also having not had any human contact. So I'm still working it out. I think a lot of it's around giving what you hope to receive and building that virtuous cycle of reciprocity. I think connection to self is a big one. Finding that, that within and truly finding it. And then equally forcing myself in ways to go out into the big wide world again and just do some stuff in real life, even if I don't have the energy, even if it feels like I should be doing something else that involves being in front of a computer, and just refamiliarizing myself what it feels like to do that, which being in Perth is a good place to do that because Perth is very much in real life kind of a scenario. So yeah, I'm still working it out, but they're the kinds of things I've been experimenting with.
Yeah, Claire, and look, firstly, good on you for creating the safe space that I guess you desire, but also you knew other people were desiring as well based on your conversations. Also want to commend you too on ice baths. That is, I think I did cold showers for like a couple of weeks as a bit of an experiment. I know all the science is there, but it was not for me. It's safe to say. But I did love hearing about that, and then the rituals as well that you have around that self-care as well. And I was going to ask a question, based on these challenges that you've experienced, what are some key lessons? And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm hearing this message of self-care is really coming through quite heavy. That is a key learning that you've come to realise. Support you in these times of challenging moments and uncertainty.
The thing I'll add to that is, because I've been thinking deeply about this sort of, what have I truly learned from this experience? And other than, there's so much positivity to it. It's been, the last 5 years have been, some of the best experiences of my life, and a lot of it's been done traveling. But what I'm realizing is, no one flourishes alone. I've seen this in many, many different contexts, and obviously evolutionary biology tells us that as well. If you flourish, I flourish, we flourish. But with that, what I've noticed is, as humans, we've sort of forgotten perhaps how to love each other. Love in an unbiased, unconditional, practical way, not an eros kind of a way. We've forgotten how to love each other, and we're really, I think, this loneliness experience, collective loneliness experience, is something to do with us remembering. And there's something important about this collective experience that we're going through globally that I think has the potential to lead to a future of flourishing, to lead to a place where we are all connecting in a way we've never known, or we haven't known for a long, long time. So that's been a big lesson, and that's the kind of conversations I want to start bringing into leadership contexts, into corporate leadership contexts, which, we'll see how that lands. I'm always one for a provocative conversation inside a leadership and organisation. But I don't think there's anything else we can do but relearn how to do this, and that's been one of the biggest learnings I've had from this experience.
That's incredible. No one flourishes alone. Sorry.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think the world needs more of those provocative conversations, so all power to you.
Absolutely. I just adored when you said no one flourishes alone. Imagine if the world understood that one sentence. It'd be such a different world. Clare, it's been so incredible to hear about your journey and your stories and your lessons learned and everything. And I deeply am grateful for you opening up and sharing all those experiences and struggles as well. I would love to know what kind of advice you would give other entrepreneurs, coaches, leaders who may be struggling in a similar way.
I think it's just really important to understand that, yes, the work we do is vital. It's not sustainable unless you love yourself and have that self-compassion and ability to tend to your own needs. And I mean, it's that classic, put your oxygen mask on first. And I think a lot of people doing this work on the front lines of serving humanity, whether it's in our context like coaches and that end of the spectrum, or whether it's first responders, or whether it's the other work I do in Australia is serving on the suicide crisis line, whether it's in that kind of context, which I think, is so interesting that the work that I've been doing in how to unlock human potential and that integrated strength-based approach is just as relevant on both ends of the spectrum, whether you're in a place where you're looking to up-level your potential or whether you're at the end of the spectrum where you're really needing to transform your wellness. This work is very similar. We're needing to do very similar things as humans, whatever end of the continuum that we're on. And but I think just realizing that you can't keep going, it's not sustainable unless you do find that way to flourish yourself and give yourself permission to flourish. And that's not selfish. In fact, it's quite selfless, and it means that we can continue to do the good work and help others do the good work. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at putting myself first, and that's part of my growth. That's what's in my shadow, and I need to, I'm working on that. So I'm not brilliant at that. I'm very aware of it, and once we become aware of things, that's the first step towards growth, and that's the uncomfortable place to be in because you know that there's growth required. So I'm still working on it, but I think just that realization that if we want to keep doing this work together, serving humanity, being in service of human flourishing, we must really prioritize our own flourishing, and it's a really serious matter. What can happen, and I've been through this. I know we've talked about it, Micah. So many people in our field have been through this. Like, burnout is very serious. Stress, chronic long-term stress is very serious. Long-term isolation and loneliness is very serious. They're all killers. It's a serious, serious thing that we're talking about here. So I just encourage people to find that space for themselves and be confident to share and talk and be vulnerable. And when you do that, you realize we're all experiencing this in different ways in some way, and life becomes easier again. Like even just have this conversation with you two at the beginning of my day on a Friday, it means I can go into my day feeling a little bit more seen and heard, and and that's important. We need that. So it would just be take a deep breath and make that commitment to connect, and vulnerability connects us. So and we are all sharing this experience. We're not doing this in isolation. So that's what I would recommend. Not that it's easy.
No, that's true. But look, Claire, I mean, there's a very good opportunity there to really just plug the Future of Flourishing, because that's what your work's all about, really. And I think you sort of summed it up really, really nicely. Look, if we've absolutely loved our conversation that we've had here today. It's been so fascinating to hear about the work that you've done and to hear about the challenges that you've experienced personally, but also those challenges that you've heard from the people that you've worked with and you've connected with as well. You created a beautiful safe space for those people to be able to connect, come together and flourish. And as you mentioned, and as Micah highlighted too, I love that line too, that, no one flourishes alone. It's such an important point for us to consider, and that's probably going to be my key takeaway from our conversation here today. But if people want to find out more about the work that you're doing, where's the best space for them to go and learn a little bit more about the Future of Flourishing?
The website, futureofflourishing.com. So that's the best place to go, and there's opportunity to join the community. And within that community, there's lots of fun things happening, so lots of virtual events. We're about to launch a sort of event marketplace as such, where those within the community can run their own events and bring their own people to those events. And there's a few other things about to be launched, a magazine, an impact hub, where we can bring together different experts and anchor their expertise and creativity and problem solving to real life problems that are happening in the world. So there's a lot to get involved in, and it's a good time as we're about to sort of relaunch the offering. And I guess I'm just always really keen to connect with people from around the world. So obviously I can be connected to personally through that website, and up for having conversations and just seeing what people are doing at a grassroots level in all parts of the world to unlock human potential and to create the conditions for everyone to flourish. So
that's amazing. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Claire. You are such an inspiring human peer and podcast guest. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us today. It was an absolute blast having you on the show.
So welcome, and I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing to open up this kind of space for these kind of conversations. It's really important. So congratulations, and I'm in awe of what you're doing.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Claire. We'll let you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Wow, that was incredible. What did you think?
Oh, she's amazing. I think a lot, a lot of the work that I do with people is talking about their why, like why do they engage in the work that they do? And I think it's so incredibly clear why Claire loves doing what she's doing with the Future of Flourishing, and creating that amazing that community, that space for other people to flourish, just resonates deeply with, I think, both of us and the work that we love doing. But it's so clearly connected it to her own why as well.
Yeah. I absolutely agree, and the whole time I was just thinking more power to her. I feel so sorry that it's such a, journey, and it requires so much effort and, concerted effort and community and work and probably finances and all the rest of it to create this business of hers, Future of Flourishing, which is so needed in this world, isn't it? And I also loved that, she said, well, well-being comes first. Well-being does come before performance. How often do we say, it's like the chicken and egg question, isn't it? Like, does performance come first? Does well-being or happiness come first? No, it's well-being needs to be the foundation and full stop. And who is really focused on that from a mental well-being perspective? Not as in preventing mental illness, but the complete mental health, the mental well-being, that what makes us feel deeply connected, what makes us feel alive, what makes us thrive in life, what gives us purpose and a sense of meaning. Like, those are the foundations we're talking about, and they should be foundations. And sorry, I'm just blapping on, but you know how at some stage she mentioned for her it's so important to get the foundations right, and straight away she's talking about sleep and probably staying hydrated and eating well and the rest of it, which is also what I often talk about. But realizing your potential, understanding what you're passionate about, connecting with people, all the rest of that should be just part of those fundamentals as well, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved how much she touched on this notion of self-care being such a crucial element in supporting all of the other parts that promote that flourishing in our lives. And I love that she brought us back to the rituals that she goes through to look after herself. That it's almost like self-care, but there was also some aspects of self-compassion there as well, which I really loved that come out in what she was speaking about. And
and self-connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I loved even the way that she spoke about like Perth being an important place for her because... And as someone who hasn't spent a lot of time there, I won't fully understand it. But for her, you can see that this is a place of connection for her where she does feel as though she can be a best version of herself, which I really loved. It sort of come out naturally in her conversations, which I thought was quite amazing. One of the other things that I thought was really interesting, and I just noted as well, I loved how Clare spoke about being lonely versus experience of loneliness. I think this is a really important thing just to sort of take a moment to unpack. And I've definitely had moments when I've experienced loneliness, but I'd never consider myself to be lonely. You can have all those amazing people around you and those support networks, but there's definitely been times, and I'm sure you probably have experienced those times of loneliness as well, where you're like, what am I doing?
Oh, for sure.
Particularly, in the starting stages of creating a business where you're like, I'm meant to, and Claire mentioned this too, I'm meant to be an expert in marketing, I'm meant to know about branding, I'm meant to be really good at, my work is what it is. But then there's all these other aspects of running a business associated with it. It's like, well, oh gosh, like, of course I'm going to feel a little bit lonely and a bit unsure about what I'm doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the distinction there is not just lonely as in lacking connections with other people, but in your professional journey, that loneliness of where you're at today in terms of your experience, your knowledge, your know-how, where you feel like you're the only one who's so clueless, perhaps not yet very successful, all those different types of loneliness. But I quickly want to get back to what you said in the beginning, and that's the difference between being lonely and having the experience of loneliness, because there instantly is this diffusion, where we almost take this meta perspective and see ourselves having as an experience rather than embodying loneliness. And that part of it is so important across all of the work I do, and I'm pretty sure probably also for you in your work, that people learn to view themselves as just having different experiences, because I guess it puts you back in the driver's seat and being able to actually do something about this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the quotes that I love to lean on as a bit of a joke is that, you don't get into leadership to necessarily make friends. It can be a lonely experience if you want to make friends sell ice cream. But it doesn't always have to be that way, right? Yeah. Like, and that's the purpose of our conversations here, for people to realize it doesn't have to be a lonely experience. There's other people out there experiencing the same things that you are as well. It's well worthwhile connecting and sharing those experiences and learning how we can support each other and learning how, and almost normalizing some of these experiences as well.
Exactly, because I guess that does so much for me personally, just knowing that others experience the same things of, sometimes not feeling very established yet or successful or whatever that might be. Knowing that others go through a similar experience makes me feel so much less lonely. But I guess that's also why I adore what Clare does with the Future of Flourishing, because it is that membership that really brings together so beautifully these different, people from different professions, from different parts, from all over the world. And all of a sudden there's this beautiful community where we can learn from each other, where we can lean upon each other, where there is this trusted and safe space for us to share our experiences. And there's never the slightest bit of judgment, but always a willingness to support, to hear, to understand, to validate. It's it's just gorgeous. And I can only say that for me on my own professional journey, it's been so important to just connect with like-minded people like yourself, like Claire, like other people I have here in Brizzy or in other parts of the world who are working for themselves or working as leaders and, perhaps are going through similar struggles, and just exchanging those experiences and support each other.
Oh, absolutely. And full credit to you here too, though, Michael, because I know that early on in my journey, I was one of those people that reached out to you, and you were very kind, and we jumped straight on and had a chat. And I think for me, personally, that was hugely beneficial in helping me understand a little bit more and maybe giving me some more confidence in the work that I was doing, that it was good work, keep at it. And I know that I've definitely now tried to almost pass that on to engage with other people as well and support them early in their journeys. And I think that's just a great thing that we can do as people working in this space. Not necessarily view everyone as competition, but more of a community. Like, how do we build the community together? And I think that's a beautiful thing that we can all contribute to.
Oh, I absolutely adore that. And I feel like it ties back so beautifully, almost back to the beginning of our conversation with Claire, where she said that once she noticed that she was struggling and feeling lonely, she basically tried to create the experiences she was craving herself, and how much that's helped her, and basically saying what you give comes back to you. And isn't that just so beautiful? And isn't that just so true?
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that's that why part. You can see, she felt this experience herself, and she thought, gosh, this isn't great. What can I do about it? I'm going to build a community so other people don't have to experience it. It's such a selfless thing to do, not just for yourself, but for so many other people. And I can just see so many people benefiting from the work that Claire's doing. And then in turn, the massive impact that's going to have on so many more people as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's absolutely incredible, the work she does. And I'm so grateful that she's been willing enough to come onto our show, let alone be the sponsor with the Future of Flourishing. So if our listeners are wanting to get more information about that, please head to futureofflourishing.com. It's an absolutely incredible membership. Can highly recommend. Thank you for listening to today's show. We hope our conversation helped normalize the struggles so many of us face on the path to success. While on the outside things often look like sunshine and rainbows, this is rarely the experience for anyone behind the facade.
But instead of letting that demotivate you, we hope it does the exact opposite, to let it fuel you to keep pursuing your purpose and realize your potential, just without the added burden of feeling inadequate, and a little more patience, some tips, and self-compassion instead. For further info, head to our website, flourishingunfiltered.com, and get in touch with us via our socials, @FlourishingUnfiltered.
Now, if you or someone you know is struggling with feelings of loneliness, low mental health, or suicidal thoughts, please know that there are people who care and treatments that can help. We've compiled some helplines for you in the show notes.
It's a wrap for Flourishing Unfiltered today. Please give us a follow and leave us a comment and a review. We hope you tune in next time.